Welcome all as we congregate to the greatest toy line in community, ever growing, ever changing. As we collect and adapt these figures to our own imaginations and embrace the fun, there's much to learn, especially if you're new to Mythics. Hey guys, welcome to another episode 48 with Mr. William Drewnowski, Bill Dorklier Drewnowski. Thank you, man. Thanks you
for having me on, man.
Appreciate it so much. I've been wanting to ask you forever, and I'm like, I don't want to bother him. But
no, I love it.
I appreciate you taking the time and hopping on with me for a few. I appreciate that.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you. Where to begin? I had some notes and I left them at work. So I'm kind of just, I'm just going to wing it. But
sounds good to me.
I usually ask like how people started into like, I had met some people and I think it was ZoloCon, and we were just talking and I always thought it was interesting to hear how people discover Mythics. You know, a lot of people that are deeper or more knowledgeable, I guess. Like a lot of people know, oh yeah, I've known the Horsemen since, back in the day, and like and some people just kind of happen into it, or I think I had heard about them in Toy Fair. Like I had read about the Four Horsemen. I was like, that's kind of a mysterious, cool name for these guys, but I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know what they look like or anything like that. But I just think it's interesting. Like that's what this show is kind of based on, is your journey to becoming new to Mythics, and how did you find the line, and it seems like everybody's story is different. And I always find it interesting. You think you could share like how you became, new to Mythics, basically?
So, I had heard of Four Horsemen. Probably the first time I really had heard of them was like during their run of classics. Like Motu Classics was around. I didn't collect them, but I had, I was into toy news and watching toy reviews and watching like Pixel Dan and stuff. So I had heard of them. And then I remembered news that they were doing their Mythic Legions Kickstarter, but I never got into them. I didn't back the first Kickstarter. It wasn't for a little while. And then it was like after the first Kickstarter shipped and maybe a wave or two was out, and I was listening to, I don't even know if they're still around. I haven't looked them up in a while, but Action Figure Blues toy podcast. They were like my show that I would just listen to every week or whatever they were. I forget their frequency, but and so they were really like talking it up and talking about like how compatible it is, and just like kind of like just like what the line's all about. And so then it kind of caught my eye a little bit. And then it was, I want to say, Covenant of Shadows. It was the wave with the knight, the deluxe knight. I think it's Covenant of Shadows.
Is that the female one or the
the male deluxe knight? Okay. And it had the Templar in the same wave. And so I was like, okay, that knight looks like amazing. It looks like it's the perfect kind of thing that this line is all about. And then I'll get the deluxe knight, and then I'll get a Templar, and then I'll have two knights, and I can mix and match, and I'll have two figures for all of the parts. So that was like my first one was that. And then
how long?
I didn't. What's that?
I was gonna say, how long did it take you to like decide? Because I feel like you're very like analytical. You know what I mean? Like, were you like kind of mulling it over? Did the knights fit like the aesthetic of like what you've been collecting?
No, honestly, I didn't really have any. It was all mostly all Star Wars stuff. I was like big into figure arts, and the podcast, my podcast at that time was SH Figure Arts podcast. In fact, I don't even know if we had started that podcast yet when I placed my first order, but that was right around the same time. Was like me getting into Mythics and me starting my podcast. But at first, the podcast was pure Star Wars.
I remember
Um,
you talking about that, how you and a
yeah,
couple of friends had made like a Star Wars podcast, right?
yeah.
And
Well, the Dorklair started off as Star Wars too. So I had a podcast before that that was it was Star Wars Card Trader
mhm,
podcast called the Trade Federation, which name I came up with that I still think was a brilliant name for Star Wars card
absolutely,
trading.
absolutely,
um, and so there was that, and then as that died down, I decided to start up something of my own, and
mhm,
I came up with the door Claire, and I was really into figure arts at the time, and I knew I wanted it to be toys, so I started with just figure arts, but I made it a name that wasn't specifically Star Wars related. It was just like a wide
right.
open kind of like it was what I referred to my toy room as, and then that's how that started. But anyway, so when I mean it really was I think it was just like a thing where there was a pre-order, like how it is when you're like
Yeah,
figures come out and you're like, oh, those guys are having a pre-order. I kept hearing about them. I'm gonna check
mhm,
them out. And there was a pre-order, and I jumped on it, and then that was the early stuff, and then there was maybe one or two waves like in that area. This is probably around 2016 or 17,
mhm.
and then when Advent of Decay, and I was just dabbling at the time, you know,
You
and
weren't
then
100% sold on.
yeah, I mean, I had them, I liked them, but I wasn't like, okay, I gotta collect these. I wasn't like super like, um, I just collect. I was just so into Star Wars at the time that was like, there
Mhm,
wasn't a lot of room for it. And then it wasn't until the Advent of Decay wave when they announced the Goblins, which is what really kind of like pulled me in more
mhm.
and really got me like, okay, all right, I gotta pay attention here.
Now you got my
Um,
interest.
because I've always been a huge fan of goblins. Ever since high school, I've had a goblin deck, Magic the Gathering goblins.
Mhm,
And so I've always been like in that area, like a fan. So I was like, oh, I gotta get some goblin action figures. I'm a huge fan of goblins. So I got in on that, and I got a few more, and then that shipping. So that I forget how long that took to ship, but like that shipping coincided with right around the time where we were putting out a ton of content, and then I decided to start doing, and we were already shifting out of Star Wars and doing other stuff. Chris had come
mhm.
on the show, and Larry was on, and we had already started doing Transformers and just like a lot of other stuff, and just it became a general toy podcast. And then around that time, we would do a review every week, and just audio. We would just talk through a figure and
Mhm.
review it. And then I decided, okay, I think I want to start doing a review, like whenever I do a review on my own, like sometimes I would just record the review separately if those guys didn't have the same figure. And I decided to do some videos with it and try to like do that. So if you go back to my original first few reviews on the channel, it's the format that I was doing reviews on the audio podcast. So I was trying to do video with the audio. It wasn't great. It was very slow, and but that first one was the Advent of Decay Nubnik. That was my first
Mhm.
video review, and yeah, and then like it kind of I still wasn't all in yet. I'm trying to remember what wave I went all in first on. But at that point, I was getting something from every wave. I was getting at least one or two from each wave, and I was picking,
Mhm.
choosing, and then it might have been Arethyr. That might have been my first all in, or maybe like the wave right before that. Like I forget what that would have been. Wasteland, maybe that might
Mhm.
have been my first all in.
Do you feel like the goblins, like the representation, like what Eric creates? do you feel like that satisfies what you perceive as a goblin or
Oh
a
yeah,
proper goblin?
yeah, totally. Like Noobnik, King No, like one of my all-time favorite Magic cards is the Goblin King, which doesn't quite look like, doesn't really look like King Noglin. Um, but like I like to me, it really matched up with what, maybe it could have been an alternate art for the Goblin King or something,
Yeah,
And then Snag is just that like mischievous goblin, and
yeah,
they all felt right to me.
yeah,
And then you had the builder, which was like those builders in the Advent of Decay, like the value in those packages, that gold elf, like a
hmm.
goblin builder, like
I
those
love
things
that
were
gold elf.
incredible. Um, so yeah, that really Advent really hooked me in. That
Mhm.
got me hooked in on it. And then from there it would be like, oh, I'd get some here and there on Big Bad, because that was the days when there was a lot of stuff on Big Bad Toy Store.
I hear about that. Yeah, a lot of
You know,
older fans had talked about how the days where Thalen would just sit there and languish.
oh yeah,
All these figures just sat there and no one would buy them.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure they were selling. It's just that there was a huge supply.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was like they were kind of peg warmers a little bit. Like they're, I mean, I guess right now you might go in and see what, like Mephitor or something is like a peg warmer, perhaps, or
Hmm.
I don't know.
So how did you so I had a question about like how did you develop like a relationship with the studio? Was it like just doing continual like reviews and like was it going to cons and seeing them? Like how did that, because I think it's so cool, like your relationship between them where they send you figure obscures and stuff and
Yeah,
just being a friend of the studio, like how did that develop?
geez, the root of that is, I would say, the Cabal is probably where I first started to um, meet people from the studio,
Hmm.
and at that point, um, Jeremy wasn't at the studio, but I think like I had been friendly with Jeremy at that point. Um, I remember doing some trades with Corn Boy. He used to be a lot more active.
I've
And I remember
heard.
him talking about the forums. I was never on those forums, but like, yeah, he was a lot more active. And yeah, I remember doing some trades with him, like when Advent came out, and
Hmm.
it was just hitting, and it wasn't at like Big Bad. It was kind of like hard to get the stuff initially,
Hmm.
like a lot of stuff is when it's just first hitting. And of course, I want it for reviews and stuff, and just to like get it a little bit early. And yeah, I remember doing some trades with him. Um, and then the conventions, like a little further along. I mean, I guess I was doing videos. I was in the Cabal. I was friendly with a lot of people in the Cabal,
Hmm.
and I was doing videos. And at one point, gosh, how long ago was this? This was pandemic era. Like,
Hmm.
there was a ToyCon New Jersey that I went down and met some people, and I met Jeremy, and I don't think he was even yet like officially with the company. Maybe he had started working on the website at that point.
Hmm.
And I remember like, just that was the I don't know if people realize, but when he built that website and it went from the old site to that new Source Horseman, and he had the mythic checklist, it like that was like a game changer. That was like such a like, people don't realize there was a time before that website. Like, that
That's
site
before
is
me.
incredible.
Yeah. No, I love
Uh,
it. That really helped me when I first started to really dig into the line. I
yeah,
remember I was at work and there was nothing going on. So I got on and I was looking at Source Horseman and it said Mythic Checklist. And I'm like, oh, there I go. So I printed and the little thumbnails of all the characters. So like I could learn the names, learn
yeah,
what they look like. And I'm like, oh, and I would read the bios and stuff. And that was like, it was almost like my version of baseball cards or something, where it
right.
was like I just had sheets of like, and I would just go through them and like check out all these amazing, because I kind of jumped in so that there was probably 300 figures before I was even a fan. So I had
Yeah.
so many to
To
explore, so
go
many
back
different
to. Yep.
figures. So that website really is a definite resource, for new
And I
fans and
I
for
was
us.
keeping a checklist back then. It's probably still. I wonder if it's still there. So I have a page on RetroZap. If
Hmm.
you go to dorklair.com, it's there. It's my podcast page, but it also has my checklists. If you
Hmm.
scroll down, it's got my Mezco checklist. Yeah, and it's got my Mythic Legions checklist.
Wow.
Um, and that was before I had been keeping that Mythic Legions checklist, and it's funny because I used to have the images on there, but I don't know, they're not showing up anymore. It's probably some
Hmm.
compatibility with Google Docs.
Yeah.
It's a Google. They're basically like mirroring these Google spreadsheets, but yeah, I used to keep that checklist, and then when the site went up, I was like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah,
So
it's
that
all
was
there
nice.
for us.
Yeah,
And now we have the book coming with Trevor's
I
amazing
cannot wait
pictures.
for that.
Me
Yeah,
too. Are they going to
yeah.
integrate, I wonder, the pictures into also the Source Horseman?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure
Yeah, they
they'll
should.
update
Absolutely.
those. It's probably just a matter of they might want to wait for the book. Just
Hmm.
one little
You don't want to
extra
give
like
everything away.
incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to kind of like soft reveal a couple images on my last video.
Nice.
Um, my that it was the video I did of like top five Mythic Legions figures if you're just getting started, right? And
That's,
I
yes,
had
I want to do that.
Snag. Yeah, I had Snag in there, and I had um, who was the other one? Oh, Scapular One. And I said, "Hey, Jeremy, what do you think about?" Because they were the only two on my video that would have been old photos. So I was like, "Hey,
Hmm.
Jeremy, what do you think about sending me those photos?" He's like, "Yeah, you can kind of reveal those on the
Sweet. I
on the
love
video."
Scapular One.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
what
one
it
of the
is.
few figures I ever went backwards and got.
I
I
know
I got
that's,
I got him right before Rising Suns when
mhm.
like everybody was like, "Oh yeah, they're definitely gonna redo him," and then the price just like plummeted, and I was like, "Yes, I will take one for
Now's the
$100.
time.
Thank you."
Yeah, yeah. I think I got mine for 100 last year, and
Yeah.
I was like, I will take it. It is a
Yep.
beautiful, beautiful figure. But I do appreciate that advice, about telling people not to look back, to look forward.
Yeah.
And there's available figures that are beautiful or that are amazing. Like the Xylernian Guard or Dubon or Lady Averona. These figures are readily available, and they're great representations of the Mythic Studios, or the Four Horsemen Studios Mythic line.
Yeah, and it's like first of all, there's very few parts that are like exclusive to old figures, and like you can find current figures with the parts, and you can kind of get a feel for whatever that old figure is by buying something recent. And then the other thing is like the figures come with so much more. There's so many more paint apps. There's so many more accessories. There's so
Yes.
many different unique sculptures. Like it's just like it can feel underwhelming. Like if you go back to get a figure, you have to almost treat it like a retro nostalgic
Yes.
kind of thing. Not like okay, let me get this old figure because it's so modern or up to date or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. It's a classic Porsche. You gotta
Yeah,
baby it. You gotta you know you gotta love it extra, and be careful with those shield handles, and but
but the coolest thing is like they're all still compatible,
mhm.
right? It's all still intercompatible, and it's like they're not necessarily outdated. They're just a little more basic because they had financial restrictions in terms of like what
Mhm.
they can offer at those
They're
prices.
limited. Yeah. So does that pop and swap ability, does that something that really was that something that drew you initially, or was that like a bonus kind of thing? Because I didn't really realize pop and swap until I had already started collecting, and I'm like, oh, I can change these parts around. Like it didn't
Yeah,
really occur to me.
that was the appeal. Like it was I had heard various you know podcasters or whatever like talking about all the different accessories, and I had seen that deluxe night, and I was like, man, that's gonna be fun to like just swap out and do different things. And actually, that's one of the few. That might be the only Mythic Legions review. Oh, maybe there was one or two more. Um, on my site, not my site, on RetroZap, I had a
Mhm.
blog essentially, short lived, and it wasn't very frequent, but it was called Photographic Plastic, where I would take pictures and do kind of reviews of figures. And that night was that was technically my first Mythic Legions review. Was that night,
Wow.
and it was fun to like pop it apart, take some, change it up, do some different parts, take some photos, and like just like play around with it. And so yeah, like right from the beginning, that was the appeal. But it
Mhm.
it wasn't like, I did get the other night to go with it, but I didn't really get it. I didn't really get how crazy you could go with popping and swapping until
Right.
later. And then there was a point where like it was like one of the All Stars ways where I was starting to look at it that way, and I was like, okay, they're reissuing Malleus and they're reissuing Torion, and
Torian.
and I was like, I could totally do pretty much a head to if I take the armor from Malleus and the body, the skin from Torion, I could totally do like a head to toe all black barbarian style body. And like that was
Mhm.
when I really kind of like got it, like in terms of like making a brand new character and a whole
Mhm.
new look and using the colors and stuff. Um, so yeah, like it took a little while for me to really like
Mhm.
get into like the creativity of the popping and swapping.
Yeah, I'm on the late train, but yeah, like when we did the armory experience, like I was looking at the fabric stuff and I'm like, oh, that would be cool to make, maybe all fabric kind of. And then I started to like piece together different pieces in my mind. And it's kind of cool. Like I've got, most people that collect mythics, we've got bins of parts and weapons.
Oh yeah.
And so I just started, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna put these boots with these legs and I'm gonna add this to and you got a whole new figure. So,
Yep.
it's just fun. It's kind of fueling the imagination, like what can I create kind of thing.
Mm.
And that's pretty cool to me. I wanted to talk to you about. I was ever since I've started collecting this line, your name was kind of always there as like giving advice. Like I feel like your your brand or your podcast or just you in general have always tried to be helpful, like,
Mm.
and I try to emulate that. So like when I started like trying to think what kind of podcast am I going to try and do, and I thought I don't really customize, or I don't pop and swap, I don't paint, I don't do anything like that. So like maybe I could do something helpful or informative,
Mm.
and so I was thinking like what could I do like that would be informational for people that are just starting. And I thought, well, maybe scale, maybe I'll do something, because like that confused me for a long
Oh
time,
yeah.
like the 2.0
Yeah.
and the 1.0. And my
Yep.
friend Eric Keys is like, check out Bill's. He did like a quick, I think it was like a 7-minute video
Yeah.
of scale, and you just like succinctly, like you just put it together so perfectly, and so I kind of use that. So we did a whole episode on like scale. So me and my friends, in one of the earlier episodes, we got like all different scales of all the different mythics,
Mm.
whether it was Frankenstein's creature who has the long elongated brute, or ogre scale, or regular brute, and 2.0 and 1.0, and dwarf, and it was just cool to show, like, and to have it all there. But like I just appreciate how helpful your videos and your information, like, and I hate to keep talking, and but I just want to recognize like that you've been there and you've been a source of information and helpfulness to a lot of us that are new to mythics, and still helpful. So I just wanted to appreciate that, or say thank you, and I appreciate that. And I think you've definitely built a reputation of being sensible and knowledgeable and helpful. And I think that's probably why people, imagine, probably send you a million messages or questions or whatever about this or that or whatever, because I think people respect your, you've built something, you know, with the community, like with, you're in the community, but I'm saying alongside of it, like you built your own, like the Dork Layer thing has become like just unbelievable. Congratulations on, I think it was at 10,000.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
That's
Um,
amazing.
it's just, it's still a relatively small channel, and it's gonna probably remain so because I think because I focus on legions, right? Like
Mhm.
I do some other stuff, like I collect a lot of stuff, but it's mostly legions, and because of that, like it's a pretty tight community. It's a pretty small community,
It
and so
is. I
I kind
love
of
that.
pride myself in like having a little bit of a smaller, um, like it's a good community, and so one of my core things, and I don't know like how I found it, like how I kind of like got to this point, but like over time, one of my core things became, and maybe it is like the checklist guy in me where I'm like, let me like make this checklist and make sure everybody has access to this thing. It's like
Mhm.
that kind of, but like over time, I just was like, I got a lot of good feedback for helpful videos. And I was like, it should really be a core mission of my channel to be welcoming to
Mhm.
newcomers, right? Like it's always been kind of something that I pride myself on having on my channel, and not like every single thing is like, sometimes there's going to be videos where like I can't I can't do every review. I can't like run through what scale is. You know what I mean? Like I
Right.
can't run
Yeah.
through scale and like teach that lesson every video, but like,
Right.
you know, I try as much as I can to like be very welcoming to newcomers and informational with them. Um, I did want to go back briefly to that earlier question because I had one part of a story that like the question about um, how did I like get closer to the Four Horsemen and how did we
Okay.
form a relationship? So there was a Toy Con New Jersey. Um, was it a Toy Con? It might have been Legions. It might have been the Legions Con that was at Toy Con. It was one event, right? And a lot of those online reveal things, I would, and I still do. I'll watch it, and as I'm watching it, I'll post. I'll post screenshots from the reveals. I'll put whatever. I'll find a way to like post stuff and just like share the news out.
Mhm.
And I was like, Jeremy, he had his booth, and we were friendly by then, and we were pretty like, pretty not close, but pretty friendly.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you should, because I don't think he was fully employed yet, but he was like, running the website and really close to them, running Legions Con, obviously at that point. And I was like, you should totally talk the Horsemen into like having press access, essentially allowing press to have early access to the assets that you share on your streams, but giving it to us a little ahead of time so that we can like pre-prep our posts, and then as you're revealing it, the press can be revealing the posts too, the way you'll see like with Hasbro and stuff and
Right.
whatever. um and he was like, that's a pretty good idea. I'll talk to the guys, and it just became a thing where I was like, you should really like get the press involved somehow. And so I um it was a little, maybe a year after that, when when like he let reviewers reveal, was it All Stars 5 Plus,
I
the
remember
new
that.
figures in All
Yeah.
Stars 5 Plus. He let reviewers do that, and so like we had it on the Legion's Lounge,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh man, like Dorklair. I know I'm in the lounge, but like Dorklair didn't get one. I'm a little bummed out. And
Yeah, I remember that. I
you know,
remember. But that was
it,
so cool that they did that. That
it
was
was,
kind of,
yeah.
I was still fairly new, so I was kind of learning everyone in and the different shows and stuff like that. But I thought that was cool that, like Jonathan got one, and I think Curtis and Jesse got one,
Yeah,
and then you guys got one.
yeah,
But that
and
that that
it,
was super cool, and I think it's smart. I'll let you keep going, but I just think
yeah,
it's smart, like that idea that you said, because it gives more information and more you're able to connect with more people. So if I
right,
have this media, if I have this video, or say like your figure obscura, and we can go back, but like here's my review already. You know what I mean? So if I'm
yeah,
like, I mean, I'm not really sure, and then I watch your review, it's already up, it's ready. You got it a week or 2 weeks before, it's
yeah.
ready to go. You worked on it. And I'm like, oh man, I didn't know it could do that. Or, oh, that would be a great pop and swap. I can use these parts that come with Ghost of Christmas Past. Those extra arms would be great on. So I think that was a great idea. Absolutely.
I think D Amazing paved the way for some of that with his work with Mezco, where he had been at the time and still does. Like he had one like yesterday, like
Mhm.
revealing figures a day ahead or
What
whenever.
did he do yesterday?
He did the Mezco, the biker Gomez.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I saw the video, the stop motion.
Yeah,
I didn't see the amazing
he
one.
did a video review of that, and so that I do think that probably paved the way a little bit. Like
Mhm.
kind of like setting a precedent for it. Um, some plug something, and so there's that side of it, and then it was just
Mhm.
like I think it kind of came out of that conversation where I was like, you got to give press access. Just send us the photos early. We'll
Mhm.
sign a NDA and or whatever, and just let us post those because it was a pain in the ass to process that information as it's coming at you and
Right.
post
Yeah.
it.
It's
You
not going to
know,
be as good either, in my
yeah, no,
opinion.
that's going to be grainier photos, whatever.
Right.
But anyway, then shortly that was like very shortly before he sent me. He's like, "Don't worry, I'll make it up to you." He sent me the first figura, and that was a one-time thing. The not the first figura, but the first figura to be
Hmm.
pre-revealed on a channel. That was the Headless Horseman.
Headless Horseman. Yeah.
And then they liked it so much, and I think some of it too was like, okay, Chris especially was super nervous that I was gonna like spill the beans. He would message me
Why?
multiple times like telling me like, dude, don't say anything. I was like, I'm not gonna say anything. And then I
They
think
love
also
their
like
surprise.
now that they can trust me, like there's that side of it too. It's like, okay, let's go back to him. We can trust him. We really like what he did with the
Mhm.
opening of the box and all that stuff. And um, I'm also a fan of literature, and
Mhm.
I think I'm a good fit for that in that way. And so that's how that
Absolutely.
came about. Really, it was that whole
Absolutely.
journey of being like, come on, get the press involved, and then from there, that All Stars 5, and then into that Figura stuff.
I love that
And
one where you guessed what it was correctly. Was it Monkey King? Which one did you guess?
there was no,
Was it
definitely not Monkey
Frankenstein?
King.
Maybe
Monkey
it's,
King took me,
was it
yeah.
Frankenstein? One of them you
Frankenstein.
guessed.
I guess I mean, yeah, I think it was Frankenstein. Um, I kind of guessed Egyptian gods
Hmm.
because there was a EG on the thing.
Hmm.
For some reason they put EG, figure obscura EG. I'm like,
Yeah.
you can't give me clues, guys. Like
I'm too
they
smart for
stopped
that, you guys.
they stopped doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I
So
love their figure obscura.
yeah,
That line, I think it was such a great idea and so much fun. Like it taps into something completely other than fantasy. Like you
yep,
said, it appeals to literary people or
yeah,
people that are maybe not into knights and things like that per se. That and it's so open. Like it could be anything within the literary or folklore, or it could be in from any
yep,
country, and that just makes it so much fun.
yeah. And it's I just love how complete of a project it is. Everyone's involved,
Mhm.
from the artwork to the lore to the like the figure itself, and it's just like this whole team effort.
Have you
It's cool.
seen Eric's brother Bradley? he's doing videos of the of like he did one of Necronominus,
Yeah, I saw
another one
those.
of
Yeah,
Sir Aldrich. I think
with Vern's voiceovers.
yes, he's
Yeah,
doing the voiceovers, but I love that. I love that they're adding new media types. They're
yeah.
branching out. They're kind of modernizing themselves into something new, like something, they're traditional, like what they're doing, like with their fantasy, with the mythics, but they're also doing like the role-playing game. They're doing Infinite Legions and stuff like that. And they hired Bradley to do like media stuff, and with the Birth of the Dragon video and all that stuff. I think
Hmm.
it's cool and it's
He's
exciting.
gonna do some cool stuff. I know he was on your show recently,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
he's gonna yeah. That's a great element to add. A videographer on
Absolutely.
that team, so cool.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited about that for sure. Definitely. Back to Figure Obscura real quick. I don't know if you've made a video or if you've said anything, but do you have any future like predictions for what they might, not based off of anything that you
Um,
might know or whatever, but
no, I
anything that
wouldn't. I
like
wouldn't
you,
know anything right now.
or anything you're hoping for?
Um,
I know a lot of
hmm.
people say like Red Riding Hood,
That
um
would be great. A
Baba
2-pack with
Yaga.
they would have to do it with the wolf, right? Like they Red Riding Hood with the wolf, like a
You'd have
2-pack.
to,
That would be
which they
amazing.
could do now with the cackler.
Yeah.
So,
I still want a Green Knight. I know it's
oh,
like they just made Green Knights, but that's not what the Green Knight looks like. He's a much different
mhm.
fantastical creature essentially. Like they would have to make an original sculpture for a Green Knight. What else would I like to see? I mean, we just read Dracula in our book club, in the
I
Doorclaw book
wanted to
club,
talk about that too. Yeah,
and
that was something else I wanted to
I
bring up.
now I want a Dracula,
Oh, I would.
because I had
Do you
never
think
read it
that's
before.
do you think that's too like predictable for them? Like, we did Frankenstein's creature, so we can't do Dracula, we can't do Wolfman, we can't do, like Universal Monsters or something, or maybe they could just do, well, they've got vampires already, but Dracula would
I
be.
I think it all comes down to if Eric has a good idea for it.
Hmm.
If Eric's got inspiration for what that can look like and how, like, he's got a good idea for it, I think they'll do it. You know, um, and I don't think that being too obvious is going to make or break anything. I do think they do try for surprises,
Hmm.
but I don't think that anything's going to get eliminated because of it not being super
Yeah.
surprising.
Well, I mean, his vision is so original that it's never going to be what you would expect it to look like. It's going to be something marvelous
Did
and
you see that
amazing.
artwork I used on the post in the Door Clear group for Dracula?
Yes.
Like
Where
that
did that come
Dracula,
from?
it's
Where did that?
it's a fairly modern painting of Dracula. I have the artist name on the post, but I can't
Mhm.
remember it just
I
like
just saw that
offhand.
today.
But that was from that is art from a Folio Society edition of the book,
Hmm.
and it's like it's very true to the description in the book, which is funny because it looks almost nothing like you would really expect Dracula to look like.
Right.
He's got like all this curly hair and he's got like this long mustache, but like that's how he's described in the
Well, I
book.
think
It's
there's been
interesting.
like wood carvings or something, or maybe tapestries where they see like you see the like Prince Vlad or and he's got like the mustache and the crown and that classic painting.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know if that's actually derived from paintings, or is that really what he looks like or what he looked like?
Or is that really what um Bram Stoker like intent, like was he
Right,
really going off that painting or in his description? Maybe, I don't know.
right. Yeah, I love Dylan turned me on to I didn't know that you had a book thing going, and Dylan's like, because we were talking about Nosferatu on I taped a couple episodes with him, so I was
Yep.
having so much fun talking with him, and he was like so excited about Nosferatu, and he's like, and Bill has got this book club thing, I'm like, well, do you have to read the book already? And he's like, well, it helps because the discussion is after you read it, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was like, shoot, that kind of leaves me out. I read it when I was younger. I had bought a book that had Dracula and Frankenstein in the same book, and I actually
Hmm.
kind of liked Frankenstein better, even though I prefer Dracula as a character.
Yeah.
I liked how Frankenstein was written because it almost seemed, excuse me, some of it like an action movie, or like I could see it, like my mind is very visual. And you had brought up today, or not today, I think it was a while ago, about the how Dracula was written, and I had responded to it today, because you had said, do you think, or how did you feel about it being journal
Yeah.
and it was journal and written letters.
Yeah. It's all like letters and stuff. Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't really care for that type of, but I mean, it's a brilliant work. I mean, I mean, it's just my opinion. It's nothing, but I love the story, but I just felt like that type, like if I tried to write a story just using that type of style, it seemed like it would be very limiting or very difficult to write in that way.
Yeah.
Like you're only going to be able to see Dracula from, you know, written, what was written, or what, like the, I don't know, it's just that was just me, but
The flip side of that is you get this interesting situation where any because it's like probably 6 or 7 different people writing letters and doing like journal entries and stuff. At any given point, that person may have died
mhm,
after writing that entry. And somebody else could continue the story. So like there's this very real possibility that any of these characters could die at any point.
mhm,
Whereas if it's somebody telling the story all the way, one character telling the story from the beginning to the end, they at least made it to the end, right?
mhm.
Like throughout it. And so you have,
Yeah, that's
right.
true. Yeah.
So there is a little bit of like fear, but I will say, I just now I've only read Dracula the once. This was my first time, but I will say that I think just in terms of like the quality of the depth of philosophical ideas and just the quality of the writing, I do feel like Frankenstein is like a masterpiece level thing, like up there with like Moby Dick and like
Mhm,
some of the masterpieces of literature.
mhm.
And Dracula's great, but I don't think maybe after a few more times reading it I could change my mind, but like I don't think I could place it anywhere near that level that I put Frankenstein at.
Do you think that if the writer had picked a different style or a different way to tell the story?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think it's the style that really does it. I think it's like more so like the depth of
Mhm,
the philosophical concepts and
mhm,
the deep um like there is some interesting stuff. Like there's a lot of reference to Shakespeare in
mhm,
Dracula, but there's something like almost mythical about um about Frankenstein. There's just it's
mhm.
almost like it's got this deeper level.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yeah. You know, uh, we we can't even go into this. There's so much to that. I don't want to get
Yeah,
lost,
yeah, that's a
but
whole
it's
other
it's really
podcast.
interesting, and I just wanted to give recognition, because I could keep talking about it. I love those books, and I love that story and the mythology. I was just gonna say how, like, how Bram Stoker came up with. I was thinking about it today because I was like, oh, I'm gonna talk to Bill tonight, and I was just thinking about Dracula and like how they came up with the mythology of his powers. Like, he can turn into a wolf or a pack of wolves, or
Yeah.
he can turn into smoke, and he can, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
where did this come from? Like, I'm always interested in,
I think the turning into smoke came directly from Macbeth. There's a ton
mhm,
of Macbeth quotes and just there's a
mhm,
ton of stuff from Macbeth. And in Macbeth, they describe the witches as essentially like dissipating into vapor and just like,
mhm,
and it's like just I'm teaching Macbeth now, and I teach Macbeth every year. I've been teaching it for like 15, almost 20 years.
mhm,
And then having had just read Dracula, like I'm seeing so many connections between the two. And I
Mhm.
will say this, that I'm pretty convinced that the idea that he turns into mist is at least partially connected to like him being a big Shakespeare guy.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's lightly borrowed uh
Yeah,
by
just like
Bram.
pulling inspiration from
Yeah.
there, probably from
Yeah.
other vampire lore and different,
Yeah.
folklore and stuff too.
I think it's interesting too, and sorry, I'll put this to rest in a minute, but I think it's interesting too what it says about us as a people, that we would still hang on to these stories after, hundreds of years. We still think about, or what is it about these two characters that keeps, that it keeps refreshing and keeps being remade and keeps,
Yeah.
what I mean? Like people build
Hmm.
on the mythology, and, drag or vampires, or, we see them for Halloween, we see them everywhere. It's interesting that type of, thing is still vital and vibrant today, after it's been,
Dracula's like I was watching a video about it, and it's like it's there's it's considered to be the one singular literary character who's had the most depictions in Hollywood cinema, and it was something like 300 times on 300 different like
I
movies
believe
have
it.
had Dracula in him, and like the next one down was like less than 100, and it was
Mhm.
Sherlock Holmes.
Wow. Yeah, I believe that. I believe that. It's just interesting, like what we as a people generationally carry with us or
Yeah.
pass on, I think
Mm.
is the interesting thing. But yeah, I thought that was cool that you have a book thing. So
And
how
that
did
came
you
out of that came out of Frankenstein. That came out of So when Frankenstein hit, I was like, you know what? I'm ready for a reread. It had been a long time since I had
mm,
read it, um, and I was like, let's do a book club. Like it just made sense to connect it with that drop, and then
what a figure too. Oh my god.
yeah, yeah, it was like the whole experience that kind of got me. And then so we did Frankenstein, and then from there I was like, let's try something completely different, and um, we did The Crystal Shard by R.A. Salvatore, the
Never
the
read that.
first Drist book. It's Forgotten Realms, like Dungeons and Dragons world with
When
Drist the Dark Elf.
when did that get written? Do you know?
80s, early 80s, I
Okay.
think, mid
Um
80s.
Two things. Have you ever heard of, well, you probably have now because of Savage Crucible, Elric of
Yep.
Melniboné and Michael Moorcock? I really recommend that book for people that haven't read that series. Just
Yep.
fantastic. I think those were written in the 60s or maybe
70,
early
7. Yeah,
70s.
I think he started this like publishing short stories in the
Mhm.
maybe in the late 60s, and then that first book, that first novel, some of the I think some of the books had been collected and
Like a
published,
magazine. I think he published him in like short story form in like
and then
different kinds
collected
of.
them in
Yes.
like a novel kind of format. But yeah, so we are actually doing that 1972, that first, the technically like the
Yes.
first novel. We're doing that next. So
Oh,
Elric of Malniboné, that's going to
yes.
be our next
I will
one
be
in
stalking
February. I think
all over
February
that.
19th or something like that is when we're going to
Thank
do
you.
it. So
Yeah, Mark had asked me. He goes, "Ask him what book he's going to do next." I'm like, "Okay, I'll ask him."
yeah,
But
Elric of
oh,
Melniboné. By the
I'm
time people see this, we'll be past that.
I like how
But
you say it better. You say it much better than I do. I always wanted to meet the author, Michael Moorcock, and just tell him, like, "Sir, you helped me through my teenage years. Like, your books were just so
nice.
fantastical." Um, and just like I think he was a little bit inspired by Conan and maybe
Yes.
some
He
other
was asked he was
characters.
asked by whatever, whatever like fantasy magazine, he was asked to give us something like Conan. We need something like Conan.
Mhm.
And so then he invented Elric in this completely like totally like different take
Opposite.
on sword and
Yes.
sorcery, right? Like
So
um
opposite.
yeah,
He's not
totally opposite.
strong.
Yeah.
He's not, you know,
He's frail.
not really
Yeah.
a womanizer. I mean, he did enjoy, the damsel in distress or whatever, but it wasn't about that, and he was frail, and this sword that, he didn't want to use, he was,
He was a sorcerer, which the
right.
opposite of Conan. Yeah, and I've only gotten into Elric in the last 4 or 5 years. I haven't read deeply into it. I've read like three of the
You're gonna love
books.
it. It's
So yeah, I've still been going on those here and there. Um, and yeah, we're gonna do that first book.
sweet. I
Yep.
can't wait. I can't wait. I hope that will attract new readers. My dog's like,
And I did pre-order the Savage Crucible Elric. I ordered
yes. I
three
was so
because
happy.
then they added that helmet
Mhm.
where you can make him a builder essentially. So I ended up getting an Elric and two builders was what I'll have.
Sweet. Yeah, I saw that and I was just like so excited. I'm like, oh, thank you. I'm excited for me, but I'm excited for people that, oh, what is this Elric character? And maybe
Yeah,
they'll pick up a book or a
add yeah,
tablet or,
yeah.
I
And
first learned about it. Go ahead, sorry.
they started collecting them in a new saga edition. So
Mhm.
it's a nice format where it presents them in world chronological order.
Yes.
I think it's like the first three books are like all the novels, and then like the next book is like the various short stories and stuff.
Mhm.
And those are the copies I have, and those I think those have really started to because they're newly published and they're kind of like in print now. Like I think those have attracted people to Elric as well because that's
Absolutely.
what got me into it. As I saw that they were publishing this, I'm like, okay, that's a great place to jump into this, and so I started
Absolutely.
picking them up.
Yeah, when I was young, they had there was a comic, and I'm trying to think of the name of the comic book company. It wasn't Fantagraphics. Anyways, I had picked up, just out of curiosity, one of the Elric comics, and I wasn't really a fan of the art, but I really liked what was going on in the story, and I just happened to go by my Walden books, and I saw like all seven of the books there because they were in like they were seven novels, but they're real small. They're
Yeah,
probably 200 pages or 250
yeah.
or something, 300 pages. And I picked one up and it just transported me. I was just like, this is amazing. Like he would go to different realms and different, alternate realities
It's a
and
multiverse. It's like the first multiverse.
multiverse.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it was scary because it's like, he didn't have the ability to just hop back and forth into this one. He would get trapped there and like walk for days trying to figure out how the hell am I going to get out of this
Mm,
place, but it was just cool. Like I'd never read anything like that at the time. This was probably 80, 86, 87,
yeah.
and I was just blown away by this vision of anyways. So I'm
You.
excited
I
and
will say that you probably like shortly after that. I would say the next multiverse or whatever would probably be the Dark Tower. If you did you
yes,
ever read that? Because
I
that was a
read
little
the
after,
first
but
book. Yeah, I read the first book
yep.
and I
Oh
never
man, it
got
gets
into it.
crazy.
Is it?
It gets crazy. It's
What the,
there's
is
seven
it?
books.
Don't they like break the third wall or fourth wall where like Stephen King actually is in the book that he's
Yes.
like
Yeah.
not spoilers, guys. Sorry. But yeah,
Yeah.
I had read about it. I read the first book and I'm like, okay, this is pretty straightforward and it's interesting. And I was like, I think it's called The Gunfighter was the
The
first
Gunslinger. Yeah.
one.
That first
Gunslinger,
one,
sorry.
I would say that probably is my favorite one. There's something super raw. Stephen
Yeah.
King was young. Like there's something about that. And then he took many years to write it and finish it.
Mhm.
Although now like after being a Martin fan for 20 years, thinking about Stephen King's slowness is not it's like nothing compared to Martin.
You're
George
talking
R. R.
about
Martin,
George. Oh, okay. I was
yeah,
like
Game of
Martin,
Thrones.
Martin. Okay.
So yeah, it's like it's all relative now, but at the time, I remember people were like complaining about how it took him so long to get from like book 3 to book 4.
Yeah, I remember because he would write other books in between.
Oh yeah,
But I mean,
Yep.
that guy is so prolific. Jeez, I grew up
Hmm.
on Stephen King, so I've read probably 85% of all of his
Wow.
stuff.
Yeah.
My mom was a fan, and so she would leave Salem's Lot laying around or The Shining, and it scared the crap out of me as a 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid. But I couldn't. It was so well written, I just couldn't stop reading it. But it scared the
Yeah.
crap out of me.
You can cruise those books. You can cruise through. He has a nice flow.
Yeah, yeah, he's very nostalgia. If people that read his stuff on a regular basis, he loves to reflect. He loves to talk about things that are nostalgia driven, like
Yeah.
boys at a lake, or what we did last summer, or
Mm,
a monster that we fought together as chums. We all came together, and
yeah.
but I love his stuff. His imagination is sorry, I'm rambling again. I wanted to get into real quick, you like when I saw this, I don't know if you posted it, but I've been so interested in this, like map, like schedule map. I don't know what you want to call it, but like a speculative um kind of guide to what might happen this year. And it just kind of obsessed me. Like I was like, this is so interesting. Have you had feedback from Jeremy? Because I heard he was like, it's good, but there's some stuff missing naturally. I mean, you don't know
Yeah.
everything, but it's good. A good speculative. Is there anything in here that you would change or you would add to?
Was this pulled from my video, or did I? Or was
I don't.
did I write this, or was this pulled? I don't even remember writing this, or did
I
I pull this from my video? Did somebody
I
pull this from my video?
think either you did or somebody else did, but I think it's yours. I hope. Geez, I hope I didn't bring up something that wasn't something that you. I thought this was something that you.
I don't even remember, honestly. But
So like,
but it's definitely like it looks like, yeah, pretty much what I covered in my
so
video.
yeah. So maybe somebody like watched it and they wrote it down and
Yeah.
posted it, but it seems like it's tracking pretty good in the beginning of this year so far.
I
Um,
mean, that video was mostly known stuff that they had announced. I mean,
mhm,
aside from like the books, which we know they're coming. It's just I was like, when are they going to come?
mhm,
And so I have that first 10 years book in July. We're I guess technically I'm right, because it's going to release in July or around
right.
then, right? But
Yeah,
um,
that's what they said, which seems like a fast turnaround because I guess
yeah, but
Trevor's
it's
still
publishing. Like, it's not. Once they're done with it, it's just the publisher just like
prints
formatting it and
whatever
printing it
they
up.
submit. Yeah, yeah, because I
It's
guess
not
there's
like a
like
figure
publishing.
that goes back and forth with like tooling and like all that
Mhm.
process. It's Printing doesn't take that long.
But
Um,
I think this is a great, like this is a whole nother thing, like but a good example. I dropped my key of you like being informative and helpful. So like for me, this is like, okay, I've got this coming in April. Okay, I've got the graveyards are coming, so I need to make sure you know what I mean. So like, I think it's a very
yeah,
informational and helpful because it gives us a kind of a framework of what's going to happen next, possibly.
yeah. And I can tell you right now that I didn't write this because in my video, I forgot to include stuff that would be getting into our hands at Legion's Con. I didn't even think to like put the armory and the 2 packs,
Okay,
like the whatever the stuff we'll get at Legion's Con would be.
yeah.
Um, but it's going to be a wild ride this year. It's going to be crazy.
Oh man, yeah. This looking at that, I'm just like it gives you an idea of like, oh my gosh, like they say like this year is going to be crazy. Like,
Yeah.
and I guess it's because they've grown so much. Like in the last few years, they've gotten bigger and bigger. You can tell by the community. Like there's new people every time you log on. It's like I don't know that guy. I've never heard of that guy. And
Yeah.
then their product is getting bigger, and they're hiring more people, and Legion's
And
cons are
they're
getting
doing
bigger.
more products. I mean, up till now it was 3 lines, right? It was Mythic, Cosmic, and Figura, and now there's going to be the legacies of Mythos, which I guess is still Mythic Legions, but like it's a new thing that's like a new kind of drop or whatever, right?
Mm.
And then it's the Infinite Legions and the books and the gaming and like just like all these other things. There's just they got to find room for it, you know. So it's all going to take up those little gaps that we would have had before.
Do you think that they're spreading themselves too thin, or do you think?
No, because a lot of the new stuff is publishing, right? Like I don't I don't see too much like Eric, right? Like it's a matter of like how much sculpting can he do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I don't think it's adding a ton to what he's gonna have to sculpt. I'm sure the dragon was, a beast to
Jeez.
deal with, but like like he doesn't do any sculpting when it comes to the game or the books or anything like that. So like
Right.
it's like these other little like areas of the company.
Yeah. I talking to Chris um on the one on one of the interviews that I had, like we were just kind of talking about the production side of like I can't imagine logistically like having to schedule so many different things and
Mhm.
having the timing. It's like we cry because it's late by a month, or we're still waiting. I've been waiting for this, but like there's so many moving parts, and so many, like, and he was kind of going through it, like why things take so long. It could be an elbow, it could be something that they're just trying to
Yep.
get right, but the transportation or the logistics of it going back and forth can take so long. It's not like a speedy, they can't just press a button and
Yeah. Yep. And one of the things that people don't realize when they see like a skeleton just drop in and they're like, come on, I've been waiting for Necronominus. And now you just put the skeleton out and now I got to wait longer for Necronominus. It's not really the case. Like it's not how it works. It's not this linear thing where this other figura that they put out is delaying the thing that you've been waiting for.
right.
The thing that you've been waiting for, there's probably 10 figures in this wave. 8 of them are complete. They're pretty
Mhm.
much done. And there's one figure that has, like you said, something wrong with the elbow or some
Mhm.
issue, and they got to go back and forth with that, and that slows the whole wave down. So that's pre-production, right?
Right.
That's like tooling and going back and forth with pre-production. Meanwhile, you're not going to just let the factory side of it, the production side of it, sit idle. You're going to let this
Right.
next thing in the queue jump in there and get
Right.
produced, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like it's like you can't just let the thing sit idle because collectors don't want to see something come out before the thing that they already ordered. Like it just
Right.
makes no sense.
Yeah, and I appreciate that on their side. Like I told Chris, I'm like, I love where you guys go into like the production of it, like how the joints work, how, like I was telling him,
Mm,
like how you guys make the hands softer so that we can put, like I just
yep.
bought this, where'd she go? This Evil Lynn, the new Evil Lynn figure, and I'm trying
Yeah.
to put this her staff in her hand, and her hands are not flexing. I'm like, what's going on here? But
Mm,
it makes me appreciate like them explaining to us like how it works, so we understand like all the engineering and the thought that goes into the creation of these figures.
yeah.
It just blows my mind, but it just gives me appreciation. Like I've never been, or never kind of experienced that type of transparency and all that before.
Yeah. And like they're not perfect. Like there's errors and problems, but like I don't think there's any line for me that matches the materials that they use. It just all feels right. It
Mm-hmm.
feels really durable and like you said the softness where it needs to be soft and
Mm-hmm.
the harder plastic where it needs to be harder and everything just feels like the right kind of plastic for a figure and there's not a lot out there that really compares to it.
Yeah.
There's really not.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot of people, and I'm one of them, where they kind of stop collecting other stuff and
Yeah,
kind of focus more. And I've heard you say yourself that you're like Mythic and Glyos,
yeah.
right? Like
Right
those
now,
are
that's
your
pretty much
main,
yeah.
and they're that's a huge, like, they're completely different kind. Well, I mean, there is the swappability, but like, can you talk a little bit about Glyos and what it is that attracts you to that line?
So here's my take on Glyos. If you take Mythic Legions over here, and you take Lego over here, and you look for the thing that's halfway between Mythic Legions and Lego, you're gonna get Glyos. Glyos is like it's a build system, right? So when the Horsemen announced Infinite Legions, they talked about they for the first time. I feel like they referenced the concept of the Legions build system as something that goes beyond mythic cosmic figura. It's something that can go beyond that, and it can be a system rather than a theme or a line. Um, and so that's kind of like what the Glyos system is. It's a build system, and it's even closer to Lego because it's like you can just build crazy stuff out of it because some of the pieces and the parts are almost abstract shapes. You can get
Yes.
down to these things where it's like that doesn't have to be an arm. That could be something else. It could be uh you could have it be this like piece of a vehicle if you want to like turn something into like a vehicle. Like there's like just endless possibilities when it comes to Glyos. And so there's that part of it. There's the similarity too is like the materials. It's such a nice plastic. It just demands you to play with it and pop it together and pop it apart and pop it together and switch things out and just it's just like it screams play with it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that good. And then the idea of like these independent toy makers who are not some giant company. They're people you can go meet. They're people who are accessible. It's this very small, intimate kind of community. And you just really get a sense of like the passion and the art side
Mm-hmm.
of it. And that part of it it almost reminds me of like the customizer community and like the
Mm-hmm.
3D community in Legions, right? Where they're all building and making things that are compatible with each other.
Right.
Um, so there's just like there actually is a lot that overlaps and that is appealing. It's just not like on a shelf and side by side they don't necessarily go together, but
Mm-hmm.
spiritually and fundamentally and just
Mm-hmm.
experience wise, they are very similar.
Now, with Glyos, is it, because I'm kind of an outsider looking in, definitely, but is there one company that makes them, and then there's other companies that kind of emulate, but they all use the same system? Like, how does that, what's the relationships there, and like, how does that, could you help me understand a little bit how
Yeah,
that?
so there if you remember at Legion's Con, Matt Dowdy from
Mm-hmm.
Onel Design, he started the Glyos system, I think like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his joint system and his proprietary system. And then he there were other people interested, and he essentially allowed them to use that system for making figures. So it's like, okay, so the Glyos are this very specific kind of like characters, and this very like he called them like the pocket figures, and like there were these very specific kind of characters. And then somebody else maybe said, I want to do ones that are almost like little mini Masters of the Universe figures, and like those came in, and right, like so he they all they all pretty much run through Matt Dowdy. Like he kind of
Okay.
runs it all, but these guys own their own molds, and they own they it's their own properties and their own figures and stuff. It's almost I don't think it's like licensed, but he basically I believe he runs like he is the connection to the factory, and then like I think it's all one. All Glyos is made at this one factory,
Okay. Are they all
and then
compatible with each other?
yep,
Or?
they're all compatible with each other, and they often do similar colorways across the dozen or so different Glyos companies. So like you'll get I don't have anything right in front of me, but like you'll get like this right here, like this specific like clear green right here.
Mhm.
Like you'll get that in this company, which is Mighty Maniacs, and then some other company will do the same exact green, but they'll do it in in their own figure style.
Mhm.
So there's collaboration that way. You can see some companies will borrow parts from others and then they'll like mix two figures together and they'll like do a drop and release it that way. Like you might get like I don't know, God Beast using some parts from
Mhm.
Rocom Toys and then mixing them in and doing a drop that's like a collab. And then like those are sold by God Beast, but it's a collaboration with Rocom Toys. And I'm still relatively new to it. So like that whole like like they're all sharing the same factory and like that the whole like behind the scenes of all that I don't really like to completely grasp it.
Mhm.
But it all runs through Matt Dowdy is what it is. It all runs through Onell. And Onell
Okay.
is the original. And then you have these other companies that are through his generosity, like also placing orders with this factory and buying their production and having paying for the steel molds and
Mhm.
they own those for themselves and then um, running production off of that.
So you can kind of pick and choose. So it's like, I'm not really liking the vision of this studio. I like how they're
Yep.
making this a little bit. I like that aesthetic
Yep.
more than this is
So
aesthetic.
like Toy Pizza, he
Mhm.
does like almost like classic 3 3/4 or 1/18 sized figures. So they're typically they're closer to 4 inch, where a lot of Glyos is 3 inch. And even though they're all compatible, it's like that style. It's like that kind of like almost like Star Wars figures style.
Okay.
And then um, you have like Battle Tribes, which is like, those are what I was saying, like those almost classic He-Man bodies, but they're like 3 inches tall. Like,
Mhm.
and they do tributes. Like another thing is tributes is like a very common thing. So like there's a tribute right there. I
Oh
mean,
wow,
it looks straight
that
up
is
looks like a
cool.
Skeletor, and then you have He-Man, right? Like,
Wow.
and so like there's a lot of tributes going on. Rocom. Now this again, by the time this airs, this will be in the past. But Rocom just announced essentially this. Actually, I'm going to open this right now.
Yes, open it. I was going to tell
Um,
you, open it, open it. Let's see what you
so
got.
this guy, this body, this guy with this eyeball head.
Hmm.
So, so they had just announced this body in the colors of Devastator, and then
Okay, the Transformer.
one the Transformer
Yeah,
Devastator, the Constructicons, and then
yeah.
one in the colors of Ultra Magnus. And
Okay.
so like those are going to be like essentially like soft tributes to
Hmm.
Transformers. Um, some people have done like Mega Man. So
I
there's some
just
Star Wars ones.
I just saw Maximilian from
Yes,
Black
yep,
Hole, and I'm like,
Black Hole,
I
yep,
kind of want that. That
yeah,
looks really cool.
and that's Onell. That drop, that Black Hole drop,
Hmm.
that was Onell specifically.
So where is a good jumping in point? Like where could I go to um like delve into the whole Glyos thing? Would I look up,
Um,
is it onel.com?
there's a
Do
wiki
they have
that's really good. Yeah, OnellDesign.com, I think it
Okay.
is. That site has like the history of all of it and
Okay.
stuff. It's got a lot of good stuff on there. Honestly, the best way to jump into the line is to this is a way off, but like when you're at Legion's Con next year or this year, Go
This
to the
year, oh my
Glyos.
God.
Go to the Glio. I mean,
I'm ready and I'm not
we're
ready.
already a quarter of the way there. You
It's
realize that?
insane. It's
Uh, but
crazy.
but yeah, go to the Glyos tables and check it out. But yeah, so like this, like you can just like pop the arm off, and you can kind of see that
Yeah,
universal peg. Every peg.
they're
So if
all
I
this.
pop this piece of the arm off, that it's
Oh
that
wow.
same peg, right?
And they're all the
Um,
same size.
yep,
Yeah,
it's
I
all the
was
same peg.
wondering how that worked because, like, a lot of the ones that I've seen don't look anything like the others. So I'm like, how are
Yeah,
these going to be compatible with each other? So they all have the same peg type,
yep. So
hole size and peg type.
this
Okay.
will look funny, but so I could take the Skeletor arms if I want, and I can just pop them in here. It'll look goofy because they're tiny,
Right.
but
The size is different, but they're compatible. Wow. Yeah.
I can take his
But that's
head.
cool. I mean, it's another one of those things where it's your imagination is the limit. Like you could,
Yeah,
if you've got the parts, you can create all kinds of amazing,
you
crazy
can put his
things.
head on there, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Put the giant arms on this one. I can't do a lot of swapping because I got a finger injury, but
No,
you can
that's
kind of
okay. That's
you
okay.
can kind of see, right?
You gave me
But
examples, and I
yeah,
appreciate
it's
that.
fun. It's just like, man, it's just so much fun to mess with these things.
So I wanted to ask two more questions, and I'll let you go. I appreciate you so
Yeah.
much for this time. Um, Ever since I've started this show, um, I'm always interested in hearing about how what people collect, but I always ask the question like, why do we collect? What is it about it? And you being so smart and just like an intelligent resource, like I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna ask Bill that. Why do you think we collect like these figures? Like why? And I'm not talking about Mythic. I'm just talking about in general. What is it about us psychologically that makes us collect these things?
Um,
What's your opinion?
I'm trying to think across everything. Like I collect cards, I collect books, I
Is it
collect
like a
figures.
hoarding thing? Is it like I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like,
I think it's an I think it's almost like an organizational thing where you are sort of um like completing a task kind of thing. I don't know.
mm,
It's like it brings order to the world. I think in some ways, like it brings order
yeah,
to the a world full of chaos.
yeah,
In that way, I think I do think a lot of it depends on what you collect. Like I collect Magic the Gathering because I
mm,
like to build decks and play cards with my friends.
mm,
I collect books because I like the experience of sitting with a really like nice quality book,
mhm.
like a nice print with like nice dark ink and the thick pages, and it just like I can see it really well, and it's just like a wonderful reading experience. Um, Figures, I think, really came down to the community. Like I was, you know, kind of like lightly collecting figures, but it was really the podcast and eventually the online community that really made me stick around with
Right.
figures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess with Magic the Gathering, it's community because it's like building decks to play with my friends. With the figures, it really is like the community is what drives me. You know, so I
It's
think
a
that's a
great,
lot of it.
yeah. I mean, it's a great thing to be a part of. But I think like, you're calling your man cave dork layer, and it's like a lot of us have like these rooms that
Yeah,
have these things around us that we love. So like I love books. I've got all kinds of books over here, over there. I've got figures, but it's like I could read the book and give it away, but like I would rather keep them. Like there's something comforting about having the things that you love around you and
yeah,
surrounding you. Like, like I come into this room and it's a mess right now, but like I come in here and it brings me like some kind of mental peace. And it always makes me curious, like, what is that about us? as humans, what is it about us that makes it comforting for us to have things that we love around us? Like, what is it? I guess, and that answers the question, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah, it's comforting. It's there's part of it is like a nostalgia, right?
Mhm.
Kind of like reconnecting with something, whether it's like reconnecting with your childhood, with the toys you collect,
Mhm.
or just having an intellectual connection to the books you read. Um, I mean I collect kind of like weird like what's a collection versus yeah, I don't know like what's a collection versus what's a library, I guess, right? Like I collect CDs. It's just like because I've been buying CDs since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And so I have just like a million CDs.
You still
Um,
collect them?
yeah, I still buy CDs, not as much as I used to.
Mhm.
And I got into vinyl a little bit,
Oh,
but I
I
still
love
prefer
vinyl.
CDs. Just vinyl is just like more of a like a physical experience, you
Yeah,
know?
that's
Um,
like a nostalgia thing too for people,
yeah,
also, because a
totally.
lot of our parents had, vinyl
Yeah.
where I
I
had
still got
vinyl
some of
too.
my mom's
Yeah,
records.
me too. Yeah, I got some Beatles and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I just think it's interesting. It just makes me wonder, because sometimes I'll look at these and I'm like, I love these figures, but like I buy them, I look at them, and then I put them on my shelf. And I look at them and they make me happy, but it's like, what is it about it? Like, what am I? And a lot of people have said, like, and there's a connection, like what you said, nostalgia. People, loved Masters of the Universe and like that kind of, and like the tribute figures. Like a lot of people will say, Kronau was my first figure, or Calros, or something
Right.
like that, or so there's a connection there with Mythic and like Motu, and like some of that nostalgia helps, I guess, people kind of realize the line or become, fans of it. But I don't know, it's just something that I always wonder about.
I think one trajectory that a lot of fans have is they enter it through nostalgia and then like just over time from collecting a lot of figures, they start to gain an appreciation for the art form of the action figure as this um this like artist's product. It's like this team effort
Mhm.
of sculpting and painting and going to the factory and producing it um and then you start to appreciate that and you'll just try out something that like Glios or something that you've just have no connection with just to check it out and just to
Mhm.
see. And then you start to appreciate it for the artistry of it, which I think is one of the things about Legions. Yes, Legions is this fantasy world that I think a lot of people connect with because of books that they've read and movies that they've watched and stuff. But then you really start to appreciate the sculpture and the paintwork and the
Absolutely.
just the craftsmanship of it is
Yes.
I think a big deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because like I would start, like, I kind of reawakened collecting back with Black Series Star Wars, and I'm
Yep.
like, these figures are great, they're fantastic, and then it might graduate eventually to like Fig Arts or Mafex, and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
Hot Toys. Ouch, where like you're
Yep.
starting to recognize the artistry in these premium figures, and then you pick up a couple of these Mythics, and it's like, for the price, for what you get, the articulation, the detail, like the Frankenstein's creature. Like I was just looking at the sculpt of that, the face. It's like,
Yeah.
for the price that we paid, $70 for this is it's amazing. Like the movement and the sculpt, and the stuff that you get. It's like, and
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of us become solely fans, or mostly just fans of this line, because fantasy checks off so many boxes, but also you're getting so much. You're getting such a value, I think, and just such artistry.
There's only so many Luke Skywalkers that you can buy,
Right,
and then it's like, I want something different, which is hilarious because I literally just got a new Luke Skywalker. I got the
right,
new vintage collection Luke.
yeah.
Um, but it's,
That's nostalgia buy, I think.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, I'm a huge fan of the vintage collection. And now that they're like coming back to, it's been a long time since they've made a really good New Hope figures. So now
Yeah,
that they're coming back to these and doing like brand new, nice versions, I'm like, I'm gonna collect those.
Absolutely. Yeah, if they would have had those when we were kids, geez.
I don't think I could have handled that. Like, I mean, it would have been cool, but like it's almost like too real. I don't know. Like, there's a little less imagination there. Like when you have
That's
those
yeah.
old Kenner figures, you know, and they're just like they're so simple, and I don't know, there's something about it.
Yeah, that's funny because like yeah, I mean I never felt restricted by the movements when I was a kid
Yeah,
of these figures, you know. Like my imagination would make them move as fluidly as I wanted them to. Like the figure
yeah,
was just kind of like was just the thing. Like my brain and my imagination made it do everything that I wanted it to. So I was totally happy with
yeah.
the
Me too.
5.0, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like something that durable and like simple almost lends itself more to play, you know? And
Hmm.
something like this, you might be more likely to break or
Right.
get frustrated with trying to pose it and stuff where
Yeah.
you try to get it to stand up and your
Yeah.
young hands can't really like manipulate it as well as like an adult can
Absolutely.
and stuff. So, um yeah, there's something to appreciate those 5 POA
Absolutely.
figures for sure.
Yeah. I needed to jam them in my pocket and go to my best friend's house and have some adventures over there.
Yep.
Good old days. One last question. What was my last question? Oh, if you could give advice to someone that is new to Mythics, I know you've said it a million times ad nauseum, but for me, or please humor me, what advice would you give to someone that just started collecting the Mythic line?
I mean, I would say right now, like if you just started collecting today, go to storehorseman.com and like browse those and pick something there.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like the first place I would start. I would go there because you can get those $26 builders and just get a sense of it and pick two. Don't buy just one. Pick two that you think
Mm-hmm.
look cool together and
Absolutely.
try some popping and swapping. Like that, like pick two that you think you could mix and match parts with.
Mm-hmm.
Try some popping and swapping um and just ask questions of people, when you get some figures in hand and you're you don't know what to do with them or what like how to move them around or you just like it's new to you, then just ask for help.
Yeah, this community is definitely full of people that are accessible and friendly and willing to you know guide you in whatever way or give you advice in any way that you're looking for it. But
Yeah, join
yeah,
the cabal. Joining the cabal is like
yes,
um a great starting place for
absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, I felt so welcome when I joined. I didn't start posting a bunch of stuff. I kind of was just reading what other people did, the photography and like the head sculpts and just learning, who the people were and also learning, the different figures and the different factions and, all this. There's so much that they've created, that, it's better to just sometimes be quiet and look before
Yep.
you jump in and start jibber jabbering. You learn a lot if you just
Yeah.
watch and observe.
That's how I join groups. I always start off as a lurker, and just kind of like check it out and see what people are saying and doing and learn the ropes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again. I remember you. I think I mentioned you. I was at Mez Coalition that you
Oh
were in.
yeah,
Yeah,
Noah Pratt.
yeah. Noah Pratt was my buddy. But I remember I remember that you had posted like, releases this year or speculative releases coming up. And, like you had used your analyzing, ability to speculate or to say what was coming out or what had been out. Like it was, and for some of us, it's not obvious or it's not an easy way to find, we can't find that information. So,
Mm.
I just wanted to give you a shout out on that I remember you back then as someone that was always being helpful and informative. So thank you.
Yeah, that goes way back, Mez Coalition. I haven't even looked at that page
I
in
think it's
a couple
shuttered. I
years.
think it's
Is it done?
yeah, yeah. Because I went back because I'm like, yeah, I'll take a look, and I think it said that the last thing was a few years ago, and
Uh,
they had shut it down. But anyways, I want to thank you again, Bill. Thank you so much for your time and
yeah.
conversations and everything. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Greg.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for watching. Remember, friends, to always have fun, be curious, share, and enjoy what this line has to offer. Come for the toys, but stay for the friends. Good night.